Today we're going to talk about how to add fields to your Salesforce Pro Suite edition. So we're going to cover all the different field types that there are. I'm going to cover the settings and how you choose which field is right for you. And then I'm going to help you avoid some really common mistakes that could cause you some real headaches later. And so that's what we're going to cover today. My name is Natalie. I'm a Salesforce MVP. I've been adminning Salesforce for 14 years, and I just saw this gap for Pro Suite customers and not enough content out there. So I really want to help you get the most out of your dollars that you're spending on your Salesforce Pro Suite. So we're going to jump right in. As you can see here, I'm on my Salesforce account page. This would be, obviously it's my name, but this would maybe be a customer name of yours, whatever your account is. And let's say we want to import our data from another system. We want to, before we do that, we're going to follow the best practice of making sure that we create a field to import. When we import our records, we have a unique ID from our other system so that when we load our data, we don't accidentally get duplicates. So maybe this is your scenario, maybe your scenario is something else, but either way, we're going to walk through these different fields that are going to be valuable to you. So again, I just hit this gear up here, you click fields, and this presents you with what Salesforce calls an object. And it might seem pretty intuitive to you now because you're seeing like it relates from opportunities, somewhat to your tabs over here. So this is just this is the most important part because you got to make sure you add the field to the right object. And think of it like a table, right? Make sure you're going to add it to the right tab or table in your Excel file is another way to think about it. So we want to add this field to our account. So now you can see here we have several different data types. What you don't know just looking at this list is actually in the advanced setup, there are about seven or so different field options that you can also add. Things like pick lists and formula fields. Things that are really valuable to you, but they're not showing here. So in another video, I'll share it at the end. I'll walk through all those different fields and what you might use them for. But today we want to just stay focused on what these field types are and how do you know what to choose here. So when you're on text, notice there's a single line and a long text area. What's important for you to note here is that if you choose a single line, you can eventually edit these in mass from what Salesforce calls a list view. Now, again, there's so much more that we can go into, but just know that single line means you can edit in mass, long text area, you can't. There are other areas where a lot of times you can't do something with a long text area, so I tend to default start with a single line. You can actually always convert it easily and upgrade it to a long text field if you need. But long text areas are usually for long descriptions, long notes, things like that. Single line should be sufficient for a lot of what you're going to do. So we're going to just name this account ID. And then what's not clear here is that you can only do a max of 255 characters. You can do less, just can't do more. Help text. Just know that this information, if this field is displayed on the layout, that this is visible to your end users. So I try to add this when it's important for the end user to know, but otherwise if it's pretty self-explanatory field, some people tell you to always add them. I only add them when it seems necessary. Import field, I can't spell, for loading data. So here's the other thing. This is what I really want you to know. Required field, I would not check this. There's only a very few rare scenarios in which you need to require this. A lot of times that's for integrations and other things. Checking this box here means that you're going to make sure every single record, no matter how it comes into Salesforce, has to have this value. And I know a lot of you are going to think, oh yes, we want that always. But think of this, a lot of times, for example, in the account ID scenario, well, this is only for when we load data. Or if you're thinking of an account number, well, are you going to assign account number to all your prospects? So maybe you don't want it required now, but you want it required later. There are ways to do that, but I would not, again, in general, If you're unsure, I would just say follow best practice, and most of the time you're not going to check that box. In this case, for the single line text, there's an opportunity where you can say, I want this to be unique, meaning I don't want any other record in the system to have this value. This is typically, again, reserved for account IDs and imports and integrations, things like that. So you probably won't need to check this other than if you're importing your data. You can choose whether or not you want it to be case sensitive. And of course, you can always add a default value if necessary. Again, what's most important to you is the name, the field, and the text. Most of these other things I rarely choose. Okay, let's just finish walking through the next few of these field types. For number, you can just notice here again, you can click a number, a percent, or a currency. The only real thing to note here is that the total between this field and this field can only equal 18 or less. So I can do 16 and 2. I can do 4 and 0, but I cannot do 20 and 1, right? So it's saying must be 18 and 0. Or again, 16 and 2 might be more common. So just note that. And then date field, you have the option for date, time, checkbox, which is pretty self-explanatory, phone, email, and URL. Again, those are all pretty self-explanatory. They are specific field types because then they require it to be in a certain format. I think phone is a little bit flexible. You can add text and extensions in there, but like email, they'll be required to make sure it has an @ and a .com or whatever. So those are your fields there. Let's go back and finish what we're doing here. I'm going to hit next. It's just going to tell me what I created, what I'm creating, and I hit save. All right, so now it tells me successful. That's great. I should be able to refresh here and see that field show up. And look at that, there it is. I will say I've noticed Salesforce has been sometimes slow on making this show up. So just know if you created it, it's there. You can always go and check it if you click settings. If you want to see if it's actually there, click on this edit account object. And then click fields and relationships. And then you can see that field is right here. Right? So you can see any of your account fields here. So if you're not sure, because it's taking a long time to show up, you can always follow that process to see where, if you actually added the field. And so that's how you do that. The other thing that you can do is move this. Maybe you don't want to show this field, or maybe you want to move it around. I talked to you about that in another video. I also talked to you in detail about those additional fields that you might want to add. I talked to you about how to update pick lists, because a lot of times maybe you want to change the values in a pick list. So that's a really good additional video to watch. And then lastly, I talked to you about how to add fields on like custom objects or other objects that you see in these apps that are not on, if you want to add a field to like campaigns or to cases, things like that aren't showing here, I'll walk you through that in the advanced setup video. So be sure to subscribe to more. Check out these other videos for more.